Hello everybody. I have always been a fan of the 996 generation of the 911. It may be the least loved to have come out of Stuttgart for quite some time, but I liked it even when it wasn't cool. These days we've seen something of a resurgence in the popularity of the 996, no doubt driven by the fact that they were, for a long time, pretty damn affordable. The 996 Turbo and GT3 suffered along with the regular Carrera for a long time, and unjustly so. Sure, they may share the same divisive looks and less than great interior, but they don't have the same engine, and therefore they don't have the same problems that the regular Carrera does. And this is interesting because a lot of people seem to forget that, and that meant that for an awful time these were a hell of a bargain. Now, 996 GT3 prices went stratospheric a little while ago, but the Turbo has only slowly crept up, and so it still represents reasonably good value, well, especially if you forget that you could pick one of these up for 20 grand not too long ago. But let's not judge this car against the prices you would pay for it 10 years ago. Let's look at it now, and I think it represents pretty good value for money. I have featured a 996 Turbo on the channel before, so why would I be driving one again? Well, for very good reason. This is not a standard turbo at all. Some years ago, its owner went to TechArt and spent nearly £20,000 modding it up. They fitted larger turbos, a remap, the Turbo S suspension, a few other bits as well, and this car then put out 540 horsepower, 120 more than the standard 420. However, that wasn't the end of this car's story, because its current owner decided then to take it to the very well known and highly regarded DMS. They've remapped it, so this now puts out 580 horsepower and 600 pound-foot of torque. That is some serious performance. There are some other goodies too, like a short shift kit, which means that the gearbox in this car is a real joy to use, and it's up there with some of the nicer units that I've used. It's fitted with a Porsche Sports exhaust, not a switchable item, but it sounds alright. The Turbo has a reputation for sounding a bit dull, but actually I think compared to today's fairly synthetic units, they're quite characterful. When I drove the 996 Turbo first, I felt it was something of a disappointment. You see, I didn't really feel like the performance gain over the regular Carrera was enough to justify the sort of lack of excitement in the driving experience. Sure, they're a quick car and they're nice enough, but I preferred the instant response that you get with a naturally aspirated engine. This changes the dynamic quite considerably though, because you see, this now has serious firepower, and so I'm very keen to see just how responsive it is and whether this suddenly makes the 996 Turbo a car that I am again interested in. Because I have to be honest with you, as much as the 996 Turbo did disappoint me a little bit when I drove it, I still massively lust after one. In speed yellow specifically, that's what it would have to be. They are such a great looking car, and they are and always were the affordable, usable, everyday alternative to a Ferrari. And really, there's so much about this 911 you could say which applies to every single 911, and that's the reason that they were so popular. Visibility is excellent. The car is very easy to place on fairly narrow British roads. The steering is light but feelsome, very direct. The car just does what I tell it to. At these kind of normal speeds as well, I really haven't pressed the pedal at all yet. It's very responsive, very nice, and doesn't feel like some modern units, like for example the little 2-litre heavily boosted things that we find in AMGs now. Those live or die depending on whether those turbos are lit, but this I feel like you could still make reasonable progress in even if the turbos were suddenly absent. However, you don't want to drive a 911 Turbo pretending that they've gone, you want to drive it with them fully lit. And I totally and completely appreciate that. So I'm going to get this car onto some suitable roads, and we're going to find out what she can do. can boogie. It's an interesting experience hustling this car. You see, when you're driving it along at normal speeds, it's all very responsive and lovely. But then when you do finally bury the throttle, it reveals its character as still being a very old school turbocharged car. So we're at 3,000 RPM now. Foot down, pause, and build, and it's through. It's not the savage delivery I've experienced with a few other cars. The turbos still come in a fairly linear and predictable way, but the punch is mighty. I do believe those power figures. However, this car doesn't feel like it's got the delicacy of some of the other 911s that I've driven, including other 996s. There's a few possible reasons for that. The Continental tyres, which are currently attached to these TechArt rims, one of the few pieces of styling that I really, really don't like. I never like TechArt wheels. I just don't. That spoiler on the back looks like the same aero kit item that I had on my C4S, and it's not a bad looking thing, but I just prefer the regular turbo treatment. The splitter at the front is a little bit too low for my liking, and for daily use, that's gonna get hit, and indeed it has, because this is the third one that the owner has fitted to the car. There's just something about that front end that makes it just not quite as sharp and as focused as I would like it to be. I would almost certainly say that it's just a piece of the car that just needs refreshing, just needs updating. The Turbo S suspension is doing a very, very nice job generally, and it's actually pretty supple still. Some of the modern 911s I've driven, especially the current GT3s, or 991 GT3 anyway, are for my liking perhaps a little bit too firm for road use. Certainly these kinds of roads. But this, very well judged. Especially if you consider that the Turbo has always been the GT offering in the proper sense of the word, the Grand Tourer. It was always the 911 that was designed to cross continents with ease, even if now very few of us actually do that. But it's nice to know you've got a car which happily could. I think perhaps some of the bushings at the front could do with being replaced with Powerflex items, and that's what the owner has done with the engine mounts at the back. Those are now, I think, possibly Vibrotechnics, don't know, but they're uprated mounts anyway. There are a lot of things on cars of this age which will need tending to, and it doesn't really matter whether it's a Ford or a Ferrari. Things will just wear out, particularly suspension components, especially on a high-performance car like this. We are most unusually following a Corvette, a C5 I think, and it's nothing to do with me, and it's lovely to see a Corvette out on British roads. Fair play to them. I'm going to whip round now and get a little bit more of that turbo because it's something. It pulls all the way to that red line, and the sound when those turbos are lit changes dramatically from being very nice 996 911, which it is when you're off boost, into just some sort of animal, an animal with a real appetite for air. The kind of sound that you hear when you're getting a quote from a builder that's going to be far, far more than you think. Listen. Oh, nah, mate, nah. That's what that sound is. That's the sound of an incoming build that's a lot bigger than you thought. You get into a rhythm with this car, though. That gearbox is brilliant. And look, I did a video recently talking about the Tiptronic with the turbo. And I know there are a lot of people that really do like the Tiptronic, and at least as many that really don't. But for this kind of car, I would go with a manual. I just would. It really adds to the experience. You can heel and toe in it without even thinking about it. This kind of car I actually really enjoy driving. I sort of part throttle. I love just slowly pressing the pedal and just feeling it, just gulp in all that air and just move you forwards. It's not the sort of car where I want to just keep stabbing at the thing because the response is still not perfect. All-wheel drive system, of course, keeps this car in check. You can feel it moving around. Ooh, it's a great thing on this kind of road though, and it feels so at home. Yeah, the turbo lag is always there. I mean, it's It's just part of the car's character, it really is, but something's changed with this car compared with the standard item. This car, though, is a very, very different proposition to the regular 996 Turbo. You see, that car, like I said, I just didn't feel offered enough for what it takes away. However, this is bringing something very, very serious to the party. It's like an uninvited house guest you're not quite sure about, but he has brought loads of drugs, so you'll let him stay anyway. And that's what this is. It seems sensible. It's actually a bit of Keith Flint. I'd still have my dream 996 Turbo in speed yellow, and I'd leave it looking bone stock. But I would be tempted to do something a bit like this to it. I really would. That would be interesting, I think. The 997 Turbo, I don't think I would want to do this to, because that's a car which is very exciting to drive as standard, maybe closer in sort of character to the regular naturally aspirated 911s. But the 996 isn't like that, and so actually this is one car that I would say, yeah, I would modify, I would do this to one of these. I'd be very interested to see as well what modern turbos would be like, as this TechArt kit is done a few years ago now, and turbo technology, I'm told, has come a very, very long way. For an old school car though, with such serious numbers, it always impresses me just how easy these things are to drive. The clutch is nice and light, I believe it's hydraulically assisted, much lighter than it say is in a regular 993 for example, or a Ferrari of the period, 355, 550, that sort of thing. The car is perfectly docile, still has something. You put your foot down and there's still a response there, just not that full turbocharged punch. It's a fairly complete package. Sure, space at the front is a little bit compromised, as it is with all all-wheel drive 911s. You've got a little bit of room on the back seats, of course, but really, it is a 911. You probably know already whether you love it or loathe it, and I've been pleasantly surprised with the TechArt. I really have. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.